how do you spend your time, how do you spend your money, and how do you spend your attention? Are you spending your time, money, and attention on the 3 things you value most in life? Because if family is one of those 3, are you taking the time to have those moments with your family? If liberation is one of the 3, are you investing your time and your energy into liberation? It's really good to take account and to always align yourself. How are you spending your time, your money, and attention? Because that's where your value goes. Okay. Oh, cool. I don't think I need Barry to introduce me. I think I could just introduce myself. Okay, bet. All right. Go ahead.
You ready?
Yep.
All right.
Cute. I've never had somebody introduce me before.
Let's go.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
So my name is Barry Mahmoud. I'm the Youth Engagement Coordinator here at PAC. And I am proud to introduce our first session today, which is on community empowerment. And with Haliema, who is our Civic Engagement Advocacy Manager. And today's breakout is going to be Finding Your Power Through Civic Engagement, Transforming Advocacy into Action. So Haliema's going, do you want me to go through the whole thing?
No.
Okay.
You good?
So Haliema, I'm sure if you guys don't know her already, passionate, loves her job, loves the community, loves civic engagement, wants to get everybody involved, and hopefully you guys get inspired by her talk.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Awesome. Thank you, Barry. And I'm going to introduce one of my favorite fellow organizers as well. We have Vera Martinez, who, Vera, share your title with the New Jersey Alliance for Immigrant Justice.
Yeah, hi everybody, my name is Vidi. I'm the Manager of Member Empowerment at the New Jersey Alliance for Immigrant Justice.
Yes. And Viri is inspiring. She is incredibly uplifting and kind and articulate and passionate and driven, and it's just an honor to work with in solidarity through the New Jersey Alliance for Immigrant Justice. And they're going to explain to you a little bit about the Alliance and then get into, so feel free to talk about the Alliance as well and all the work that you guys do. And then we'll get into this session on how does a bill become a law and how to look up your legislators. And if you guys have any questions or if there's anything that you really want us to focus on, it's a small group, feel free to let us know. Okay, go ahead, Barry.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me, PAC. I'm really excited to talk about how a bill becomes a law in New Jersey. This is actually one of my favorite trainings. So my name is Vidi. Again, I'm with the New Jersey Alliance for Immigrant Justice. We're the state's largest immigration coalition with over 60 member organizations that fight for policies that protect and empower immigrants. We span the entire state of New Jersey, and PAC is one of our awesome members. So really, again, really excited to be here. So today we're just going to talk about how the bill becomes a law in New Jersey. But before we get started, you can shift to the next slide. Sorry. Is it okay if I present now?
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't realize that you weren't. Go ahead.
Let's see.
Is it letting you?
1 second.
Okay. Yeah, that makes more sense.
See my screen?
Yep.
Cool. Okay, so this is the agenda for today. We're going to go over our land acknowledgement and the purpose of why we're here today. We're going to go over the New Jersey legislature and a little bit of politics. We're going to go over the legislative calendar, the legislative process, and then we're going to recap it all. So before we start, I just wanted to ground this in a land acknowledgement. So the New Jersey Alliance for Immigrant Justice, we acknowledge that we are on stolen land, and that in any conflict that we're we're talking about changing laws or fighting for new laws, we have to really be rooted in the understanding that the laws that have defined border, that have defined race, that have defined belonging, have been rooted in white supremacy, and that a fight for the land, a fight for belonging, a fight for citizenship even is a fight against all of that, against white supremacy. So I invite everyone here to locate themselves on the map and look at who used to live here, even folks who continue to live here. So I live in Perth Amboy, so it's like right in this armpit of New Jersey, this part right here. And I'm in Muncie-Lynn, Bayland. So I'll give us just a few seconds to just reflect on the map.
Can I share something that I know that is one of my favorite practices from the indigenous tribes that I learned about organizing? Is that whenever they introduce themselves, they say their name and they say what their like lineage was known for in terms of like if they were fishermen or gatherers, like they. So for me, I've always adopted that, and maybe we can ask everyone in the room. So like my name is Haliema Ahmed Twam. I carry my paternal grandmother's name. Our family's originally from the West Bank in Jebba, and my grandfather was I had one grandfather who was an imam and owned a store, and then I had and then we had some judges in our family, and then I also had another grandfather who was just like this wild world traveler who I think I get a lot of my fun from. So CJ, can you share next?
Sure. My name is Sidra Ann Habal. I'm Polish, Irish, Syrian, and Egyptian, and both of my grandfathers were engineers.
Very cool.
I'm Klaus. My parents, I'm Salvadorian. I don't know my grandfather. My grandmother, my family was very impoverished in El Salvador. They lived through the Civil War, and honestly, a lot of my forefathers are illiterate, and they worked in the field when they were very young. So, and yeah, my parents took the track up north, because of the destabilization in our country. So we came to a country that didn't want us. So here we are.
So warriors and farmers and survivors.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Barry, do you want to go? And then Ali?
Nah, I go first.
Ali?
So my name is Apaéstegu. I was born here in America, but my dad is from Jordan, and my mother, she's originally from Bethlehem, Palestine. And I carry my father's last name because my last name is Bedoui. It means Bedouin. They come from the Bedouins in Lebanon. My mother and her family, they're originally from Bethlehem. I wish the best of the Palestinian people, and so I hope they get great.
So, my name is Dante Mahmoud, but my dad named me Abdel. So my name is kind of split in half. Both of my parents are from Beit Amen, Palestine. My dad was the first out of his family to get a college education, to go past high school. My grandfather, on my dad's side, he was a traveler, and he went to Brazil when he was 20 years old. My dad was a toddler. And on my mom's side, my grandfather was a security guard on construction sites. But both of my grandmothers were fellahin, like to the core. Sopaya on my dad's side would take my dad and his siblings to El Quds to sit in front of the Al-Amud, the Damascus Gate, and sell all the fruits that they had gone and picked the day before or whatever it was. And a story that my dad always recounts, because basically raised by a single mother. My dad's father figure was his grandfather, Sidama, who was one of the only people, that in the Bellet that was, this big guy, a head honcho, But so my grandmother is illiterate, and so my dad would always tell me how amazed he would be at how when they would be bartering or selling the fruits at the Amud, how she would know what the notes were. I got background music now.
You invoke the ancestors.
Either that or they're telling me to stop.
Amazing.
So my dad would be amazed at how she would know how much this note would be, how much this note would be. But she would just be going like throughout the entire day, just okay, here's the scale, here's this, all right, give me that. And my dad spent his entire life, or at least his childhood, doing that with his mother.
Anyone was gonna invoke the ancestors, it was probably gonna be very honestly. That was awesome. Okay, and but again, so we're just talking about how in indigenous tribes, because we're doing a land acknowledgement, how a practice that I learned from them was that whenever they are, introducing themselves, they give basically like a short history of their lineage and their family, and like the trade that they were involved in as their family. So, do you want to share?
So I'm from Palestine. I'm from a village called NG. My grandparents were all farmers, and that was pretty much like the job, I guess, for the whole village. My grandparents, specifically my mom's father, he was a farmer as a young man, and then when he came and immigrated to the United States, he started working as like a taxi driver and an insurance salesman. And my dad's dad was also like a reseller and fruits and vegetables, and then turned into like clothing and just out of like his truck in Patterson. And then that's pretty much it.
Very cool. And then Miri, you also share yours?
Yeah, definitely. So, my parents come from 2 different countries, still within Latin America. So my name is Vidi. It's actually Viridiana. It means verdant, it means green, it means growing, which makes, I feel like now that I'm reflecting on this, it makes sense. It connects back to like what my family has done for like generations. So on my father's side, they had a lineage of like construction work in Mexico, whether it was building their own homes or building their neighbors' homes. And now my dad works in a kitchen, but my dad came over just a few weeks ago, and he like built from nothing, just like garden beds, like literally like 5 garden beds, and was like that was easy for him. And I think it comes from like that understanding and that like knowledge and skill that gets like passed down. And then from my mom's side, she's from Dominican Republic. There's a very strong lineage of working with the land and being one with the land and taking care of animals. My great-grandfather and my grandfather and my great-grandmother, they were all farmers. They took care of the land. They would sell sugarcane and yams. They would sell everything to like keep the family going. And that definitely got passed down because my mom has an amazing green thumb. She can revive anything. It could be dead, like completely dead, and she'll be like, it's going to live by tomorrow, and all of a sudden it just sprouts out of nowhere. I think I'm learning to have a green thumb now as an adult, but my mom is definitely brilliant, and that definitely was passed down from my former ancestors. But yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Thank you. And you can go ahead and pick back up. Ready?
Right. Okay. Cool. So now that we've done the land acknowledgement, thank you so much everyone for sharing parts of yourself and sharing parts of your story and your family. a lot of this work that we do for, liberation is really deeply rooted and starts with our families. It starts with our experiences, right? Whether it's what things happen that happen, whether it's what happens in your own town, in your own city, in your own country, or in your own family, those things impact us and take us to places where we want to create change. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the New Jersey legislature and just politics 101. So the New Jersey legislature, we have 40 legislative districts, so New Jersey is broken up into districts across the state. And for every district, there's 40 districts, there's 1 senator and 2 assembly people. In total, for the entire state, there are 40 state senators and 80 assembly people. My question for y'all is, if you are writing to your state representatives, how many emails are you going to include? Remember, each district has 1 senator and 2 assembly people.
I think she's asking for you guys to just you can say it out loud.
Yeah, definitely shout it out.
3.
You don't want to answer the question.
Yeah, no, the veterans can't, Okay, cool. So yeah, there's 3. Does anyone know why there's 3? Just name the implicit as explicit. Why are there 3 when you email your representatives?
The 1 senator and the 2 assembly people. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, cool. So again, for every district that there is, you have 1 senator and 2 assembly people. Haliema is going to show you how to find your representatives later using the New Jersey legislature website, and then how to email them, because all of that is out on their website for you to reach out to them. So for the state assembly, now we're going to talk about partisanship. In the assembly, there's 52 Democrats and 28 Republicans as of right now. In the Senate side, there's 25 Democrats and 15 Republicans. So now my question for y'all is, which party has the majority in New Jersey? Democrats. Yes. So
that can all change in November.
Yeah. So we have Democrats in the majority, Republicans in the minority. Move on to the next slide. And each chamber, the Assembly and the Senate, has a leader. I really want to name these, so we start, as I'm talking about how the bill becomes a law, y'all remember, I know what this is, or I know who that person is. So in the Senate, the leader of the Senate is called the President. So we call them the Senate President. In the Assembly, the leader is called the Speaker. They're called the Speaker of the Assembly Speaker.
Does anyone know who those 2 people are?
So there's one Coughlin and the other one is, I don't know the name right now.
Who's Coughlin?
Speaker?
Yes.
Assembly, right?
Yep. Who's
I know a lot of these things.
that's awesome that you know that. But who's the Senate President? We had to call him for Ira. If anyone was making calls for Ira. But do you know?
No.
Okay, go ahead, Mary.
Scutari.
There you go.
So Assemblyman Coughlin is the Speaker of the Assembly, so we call him just like the Speaker. And then Scutari, he is the Senate President. So the majority party in each chamber has a leader too, and they are called the majority leader. So, for example, we have the majority leader in the assembly is who? If we talked about who has the majority the slide before, who do you think has the majority in the assembly?
The Democrats.
Partisanship. I'm sorry?
The Democrats.
Democrats, yes. So there's a leader in the assembly who represents all the Democrats, who corrals them, who herds them, and gets them on the same page. They are the majority leader. And the Senate side, it's the same thing. So all the Democrats, they have a person who's the majority leader in there. And they corral all of the Democrats. So who has influence, right? We're going to be talking about a process that isn't just like a neutral process. Nothing is neutral. Nothing ever is neutral. When we're talking about power, when we're talking about politics, it's never neutral. So in the legislative process, leadership has a lot of influence. Leadership is, Leadership is the Senate President and the Speaker, which is Coughlin and Scutari. They have a lot of influence on what happens to a bill. If it moves, if it dies, they really have a hand on what happens to a bill. There's also caucus members, which I won't really talk about in this presentation, but just really quickly, caucus members are like these, think about like fraternities, like these clubs for like legislators. So like there's like the Latino caucus, there's the Black caucus, there's the API caucus. So these are just people that are together for like around an identity, right? They work together because they are part of an identity group. But they aren't together on any singular issue. They're just like in the same group because they're all Latino, for example. But those members have a lot of power because if you are, let's say, working on an immigration bill, which I work in the immigration space, we want to get the Latino caucus to sign off and like support our bill because we know that a lot of the Latino community members feel represented and their Latino legislators as immigrants.
Barry, do you mind just actually naming a few of the current initiatives so that people can also use this moment to become more informed about those particular immigration issues that you guys are working on right now that people can support?
Yeah, I have a link at the end. I can share more, so I can like walk through the website if that's okay.
Cool.
I just want to walk folks through the process, so it's like
Awesome.
so it's like no one's like nervous, like what is this?
Awesome.
Yeah. So then there's district mates. So district mates are like people that you run together with, right? So like the senator, the assembly people, they run on the same ballot every election, right? So if let's say the assembly person, he is championing your bill, you really want the senator to also champion your bill. So they have influence on influencing each other so that your bill gets support from your district. There's also county and local politicians and parties, which I'm not going to get too much into, but these people really do have power. Your mayors, right, like your county commissioners, like they are also in the game of politics, so they have an influence on your bill. There's also an election cycle, right? In the past election cycle, right? So the assembly has 2 years. Any assembly person that is ever sworn into office, they have 2 years on the job. The Senate terms are a little iffy. So there's 2 years, 4 years, and 4 years. I'm not going to get too much into this, but for the first term of the decade, we know that the census happens every 10 years, right? Every 10 years, we get the census. And the census tells us, oh, this district lost a lot of people, but like this district had a boom in population. So we're going to shift the district maps so that we can rearrange the districts to really represent the amount of people and the amount of power that each district should have. So in that first, like when the census comes out and the districts are changed up, those first 2 years, it's just 2 years that the Senate is like in the job, like on the job. So they're on the job for 2 years, but then every year after it's 4 years. So I'll give you the example of 2020. So 2020 was a decade year. We had the census. Any senator that was sworn in was only there for 2 years, and then they had to go up for re-election again. So when 2022 came around, that they served 2 years on the job, they ran for re-election. Anyone who ran for re-election, they ran for 4 years on the job, and whoever got the job, and they were on the job for 4 years. It's just a silly rule. I don't know why New Jersey works this way, but that's just the way New Jersey works. So that's it for who influences the bill. Now we're going to go over the legislative calendar. Now bear with me all. So the legislative calendar lasts for 2 legislative sessions. 2 years. A legislative session lasts for 2 years. That means that in 2 years, your bill needs to get introduced and passed. If it does not pass in 2 years, your bill is dead. It has to get reintroduced. And I'll tell you from experience, we've had many immigration bills in New Jersey not pass in 2 years and then die and then have to get reintroduced. The driver's license bill took almost 20 years. The driver's license bill that allows undocumented people to drive, that passed in 2019, that was a 20-year fight. And every 2 years, we would introduce the bill and it would die. And so it only happened in 2017 that we introduced the bill, and then in a matter of months it got passed. It got introduced in 2017, nothing happened with the bill, and then at the very end of the legislative cycle, that's when they wanted to start doing their jobs. And they felt like a fire under their butt, the legislators, and then they passed it. So we met the 2-year mark, our bill met the 2-year mark, and that's why it passed. Now this is how the legislative cycle works, but also the budget process. We can't talk about how a bill becomes a law in New Jersey without talking about the budget process. Are folks aware of the budget process, or do folks know about anything about the budget process in New Jersey?
Have this on my wall, please.
No.
Okay, I'm seeing head shakes and I'm hearing no, and then I heard someone else say something.
I was just saying I have this on my wall because of you guys now.
Wait,
I printed out this slide and I have it hanging on my wall now.
The legislative process is already so obscure, but when we're talking about the budget process, it's even more obscure. New Jersey has a terrible, terrible, terrible way of letting the people know about the budget process. I'm going to go over the budget process in a second, but I'm just going to explain what other states do and then what New Jersey does. What other states do, I'll give you New York, for example. New York is not the best state for transparency. We see New York always in the news for one thing or another, but their budget process is pretty good. The governor comes out with his budget proposals, he posts it on the website. It stays on the website for like over a month. Then the legislature comes out with their proposal for the budget and then stays on there for another month. The people can go on the website and look at the budget process and look at like, oh, this program is going to cost this much money, or like, oh my god, this program that I really love isn't getting any money, right? People can like look at the budget, and then they can go to the state capitol and be like, hey, I want this program to be funded. Hey, I saw that this isn't taking priority in the budget, and then people can go. Sorry, I'm getting all my Slack messages. Then people can go and advocate for their priorities at the state house.
Can I pause right there for a second?
Yeah.
So, why do you think that would be important to know? I mean, because we're talking about, because this whole conference is rooted in Palestine. Why do you think that particular part of information is so important in being effective in our movement? And like knowing how we're spending our budget and when those proposals are happening.
To know when to advocate for what we care about, so that they can put that into the budget.
What's something that just recently happened in this administration that's a pretty big deal in terms of funding for the state?
The Department of Education.
Department of Education. And that affects disproportionately people with disabilities. And so now that we're losing all this federal funding, how does that also, from the education department, how does that work into our liberation movement?
You want me to? I'll
Does anyone else have any ideas on how that would work towards our liberation movement? If we're losing funding from the education department, what's one way we can make that up? Go ahead, Barry.
Community education.
Community education is yeah, that's true. But I'm thinking more about in terms of liberation, right? So So now we know that right now, I keep talking about this for the assembly base. If we know that all of our contracts with Israel are due, and all of our Israeli bonds are up in November of this year, we would have to re-sign those contracts. Is that not a great opportunity to bring in unions from like within the education department and say, wouldn't you rather invest this $30 million back into our education system since we're losing federal funding to help supplement the loss in your programs? And now we're coalition building, now we're building allyship, now we're getting unions, and we're saying let's move away from apartheid and war and divest 30 million on a bond that has a low interest, a low return rate, and a bad credit score. Because what if educators knew that we had that money just sitting there, that we were giving away to a foreign government? How can that shift the movement? So I think that's why it's so important to know what's happening with our budget. Because that's how we can, Abir said it yesterday in our 3 circle. It's not enough to just abolish. We have to think of ways to build something in place of it. It's not enough to say, don't spend this money. We have to say, spend it here instead. Okay, go ahead, Gary.
Cool. Yeah, definitely what Haliema's saying, right? So, while, for example, like New York has all the issues that it has, but at least it's showing people the budget, like what the priorities that the legislature and that the governor thinks the state should go, like where, like the line, or the direction the state should go with its money. But New Jersey doesn't do that. New Jersey, we're gonna walk through this process, but New Jersey passes their budget within a night. And a lot of the time, a lot of these legislators don't know what they're voting on because it's a 600-page budget and they have to vote on it before midnight or the state closes down. Like we have a shutdown, meaning people aren't getting their state aid, veterans aren't getting, their state aid. People are just like, the beaches get closed down, all the public services get like completely like shut down. So I'm going to walk through this legislative process, but just know that in the back of your head, New Jersey often passes their budget in like less than 24 hours without reading what's in it. So from September to January.
Barry, who writes the budget?
Yeah, I'm about to go into it. Yeah. So from September to January, the Office of Management and Budget, they put out this report, and they say, hey, New Jersey is making this much money, but it's also like using this much money. So making and costs, like they put out this budget about like the revenue and the expenses for the year, right, for the upcoming year. From January to February, the governor makes this huge speech, and it's called the State of the State. Advocates listen to the State of the State not because it's like a really phenomenal speech. It's not. Like, in the State of the State, the governor says what his priorities are for the upcoming year and what he wants the legislature to prioritize. So we heard in the last State of the State that he wants 16 to 17-year-olds to be able to vote in school board elections like they did in Newark. That's my priority. I want the legislature to pass that. Okay. But we also hear him not say things. He doesn't talk, in the last State of the State, he didn't talk about immigrant rights. He didn't talk about police accountability. He didn't talk about Palestine. He didn't talk about like what was happening with like the students being like completely violated on the campuses, right? He didn't talk about that. So the State of the State gives us an understanding of what priorities the governor has for the state, and it tells us what he doesn't have a priority for. Then, in that time period, in January, February, the governor puts out his budget proposal. He's like, here, legislature, this is what I think we should spend our money on. So, from February to May, the Office of Legislative Services has their own separate report on what they think is gonna cost, you know, this bill, that program, XYZ, right? So they just have like a proposal. They have like their proposal of like what everything's gonna cost New Jersey and how much debt we're gonna be in. Yeah. Then from February to May, which is happening now, like right now, there's hearings on these projections. So, for example, we saw, and I'm speaking from the immigrant rights perspective because like that's the world that I live in right now. So, the hearings happened in late March, and a lot of these hearings, right, we saw in the projections, in the OLS revenue projections, we saw that they said, what's it called, that the detention and deportation, the Defense and Deportation Initiative, which gives people legal services whenever they're being deported or detained, they have like a lawyer. They said that they were going to give it the same amount of money as last year, which makes no sense when like there's way more deportations and way more detention happening and more ICE on our streets, right? So that amount of money doesn't make sense for like the reality of the moment. So we had hearings, we went down to Trenton, all of our members went down to Trenton, and they advocated for more legal representation for people who are in detention and facing deportation. So this is the time, right? February to May when we're having these hearings so that we can go down to Trenton and be like, hey, you said that you want to only give this program $1 million. That doesn't make sense, like we're in a different time period, right, than last year, so we need more money. So this is the time that we're advocating for more money for things, or we're advocating for less money for things, like cops in schools, like that type of thing. So then from May to June, which is coming up very, very shortly, legislators are going to go into budget mayhem. They do not want to hear about any, like they don't want to hear from constituents, they don't want to hear from like advocates at all because their only priority from May to June is to pass the budget. They're negotiating with other people saying like, if you vote yes on the budget for this thing, I'll give you this thing, I'll vote yes for this thing. So they're negotiating and they're also like voting on like all these appropriations. So that's what's happening from May to June. So from May to June, you should not be going to your legislator because they will not listen to you. They will be like, why didn't you come to me in February to May? Okay. So then September comes around. May to June. June, the budget has to get passed. If it doesn't get passed, we go to a government shutdown, meaning people don't get paid, state workers don't get paid, teachers don't get paid, like their pensions stop getting funneled, like a lot of things go bad. So from May to June, the budget has to get passed, and if it doesn't, a lot of our communities end up suffering. Then September, and then from June to September, which isn't here, June to September, it's right here, sorry, I'm like looking from left to right, it's right here. So then June, the budget passes. July comes around and all the legislators return to their districts. And they hear from community members, so this is a time that you go back to your legislators and say like, hey, like I have an important issue that I want to, I want it to be county bill, right? Same things here, August, the same thing. They're still in their district, they're hearing from community members. This is the time where you're going to your legislators to tell them what is happening in the community, what issues you want them to bring up in the legislative cycle when they come back to the job. Then September rolls around and the Office of Management and Budget begins their revenue expenses for the next year. So we're back here, y'all. Like we're back in September from like earlier. OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, they go back and they're like, all right, let's look at like what's going to cost New Jersey next year. Like how much have we spent? Like how much is it going to cost, for XYZ? So from September, they're already planning for the next fiscal year, the next year on like how the money's going to be managed in New Jersey. And then we start all over again, right? So again, looking at this budget process, a lot of it is obscure, but it's really important to know that you are going to your legislators during the summer, July and August, to tell them what are the issues that are most impacting your community. That is where you're going, okay? do not go to your legislator during May and June because they will never listen to you. They will be really just really nasty and be like, why didn't you come to me earlier? So that this priority that you wanted, right, this community center, this seniors program that you wanted, we could have put it in the state budget already, not when it's being voted on.
Barry,
So,
real quick, Barry has his hand. I get a question.
Sorry, I can't see. Yes, go first.
So when has there been a state shutdown in like recent
Yeah,
years?
there's that.
Christy.
Yeah, the one that I remember. Sorry, I got too excited about trauma from the Christy years, but do y'all remember that picture of Chris Christie on the beach?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was prime time government shutdown. So the government shut down, the state government shut down because they didn't pass the state budget on time. And so all the state parks, including our state funded beaches, shut down. And what a joke it was for for all New Jerseyans to see their governor have access to the beach and to be on there with his family while everyone else is not allowed to because of the state shutdown. So that's one of the most famous ones because that went national. Any other questions? That's a good question, Barry.
It opened soon after that picture.
I'm sorry.
I said it opened soon after that picture.
Oh yeah, it did open right
Yeah,
after
the
the picture. Yeah.
The picture was too. You had to do damage control.
Yeah, and it was also during Hurricane Sandy, right? Was it Hurricane Sandy or Irene? Wasn't there a huge?
It was.
Yeah, it was Hurricane Sandy, yeah. Yeah, so we have gone through government shutdowns. They try their best to not get it done, but we have a terrible process where they're voting on something that they haven't read, like I said before, and then things make it into the budget that just never made sense in the first place, right? So that's the budget process. I needed to talk about the budget process to talk about the legislative process so that okay, I'm learning about the legislative process, but now I know when I should go talk to my my assembly person and my senator about issues in the community. So now we're gonna talk about the legislative process. So if y'all want to take a picture of this, y'all can, but I think Haliema will also just tell me how you can, I'll send you the slides so you can just send it to folks. So
Is
this
there
is
a
the
way?
legislative
Sorry.
process.
Is there a way you can just full screen the slides?
Oh, full screen?
Yeah.
Was I not full screen the whole time? I'm sorry. Hold on. Let's see.
I think when you share screen, instead of sharing just share that one tab instead of your entire. Yeah,
Perfect.
you got it now.
That's great.
Okay, sorry y'all. I didn't know. Sorry. Okay. Cool. So this is the bill to law process in New Jersey. We're gonna go through it and Haliema will send this to y'all, but we're gonna go through this process together. The first step is bill drafting. So the first step is to really source an idea for a bill. Sorry, I'll stop before. Yeah.
No, you're good.
Okay, good.
What did I look at?
Okay. We're good.
Okay, cool. So the first step in this whole legislative process is to find an idea for your bill, right? So PAC is doing this. PAC does this really well, actually, where they organize these town halls. They're hearing from community through their community services, right? They're doing case management. And during this time, all these stories that PAC is collecting and a lot of other organizations are collecting, right? They're seeing a threat, they're seeing an issue that threads through so many community members' stories. And they're like, wow, this could be something. This is an issue that's not just impacting this one person, it's impacting so many people. So then the second step is when you draft that bill, right? So I'll give the example of the driver's license bill, like I said before. We have the driver's license bill, we won the driver's license bill. Awesome. Our community members are going to the Motor Vehicles Commission to get their driver's licenses, and in the law, we said that there had to be a translator, service in each MDC. It's called Language Link. But we heard across the entire state of New Jersey that immigrant community members, when they go their driver's license, they were not being offered Language Link, one. And two, a lot of community members were being turned away because they didn't speak, because the staff members at the MDC didn't speak any other language other than, let's say, like English and Spanish. So that meant that a lot of our API communities were being left behind, a lot of our art community members were being left behind. So a lot of our communities were being left behind, right, because of the lack of translator services at their work. So what we decided to do as a coalition was pass a language access bill. So out of a law that already existed, we thought of an idea for another law. Okay. We realized that there was a lack of translation services, so we were like, we're gonna fight for a translation services law. So that's what happened, right? So when you're drafting a bill, just be honest, be realistic, and be imaginative, but also the most important part is be realistic. Can you achieve what you want to achieve in this one bill, or is it going to take multiple bills?
We have another example of that too with Iowa. We kept hearing that in order for them to not support bills 83558 and that's 1292, which were saying that anti-Zionism is the same as anti-Semitism, that they needed a different definition in which that they said, if they were going about Islamophobia, which there can't be two separate bills because then it still defeats the purpose. You'd still be getting the worser end of the stick, because then we still wouldn't be able to critique. And we would still be using problematic definitions. So we created a bill with Rod Siegel on a joint definition.
Yeah, for sure. And so similar to what Haliema said, right? You are hearing from your communities. You are understanding what are the issues impacting your community and what you think is going to be a great solution to address that issue, right? So once you have the issue in mind, you go down to step 2 and that's drafting the bill. So you as a community member or as a part of a coalition, as part of an organization, you can draft your own bill. Or you can go to the Office of Legislative Services, remember that that office that I mentioned earlier. You can go to them and they can draft it for you, but it's going to take some time if they do it. If you do it, it's on your own time, but if OLS, the Office of Legislative Services, does it, it's going to take a little bit of time.
Did anyone know that you could draft your own bills? Does it kind of de-romanticize the legislator a bit and these lawmakers knowing that you as a community member can draft your own bill and garner community support in order to have more reflective policies being upheld by representatives that we elect and that should be beholden to us? As in terms of we manage them, they work for us. So we should know that we can draft our own bills.
Yeah, and
Sorry, I was gonna say, it just kind of feels like gatekeeping. You feel like you want
Gatekeeping?
To know and have, to have that ability and know that they have the opportunity to do that, but that's not something we usually share.
I think this whole thing is just breaking down gatekeeping. This whole presentation is letting everybody know what's behind the curtain, essentially.
Yeah. For sure. So when y'all are drafting your bill, there's some things to take note of. Whether you're going to the Office of Legislative Services or you're drafting a bill with an organization like PAC, right? You have to think through these, right? What is your non-negotiable item? What is one thing that you're not going to let go? This is the thing that has to get passed, and if it doesn't get passed, there's no reason why, we're even fighting for this. Know what your non-negotiable is, and be on the same page with all of your partners and all your coalition members on what that non-negotiable is, right? Also think about what's nice to have but not necessary. These are the things that you're okay of letting go, right? While we have that one thing that we're we can't let this go, start thinking about what you're okay with leaving behind. If it means that, those things do have to get left behind, it's okay because at least your North Star isn't being, isn't being overshadowed or yeah. And then the last thing is, what are the larger problems that your bill is probably not going to address? And this is what I said earlier, right? Like, is this one bill going to address the issue? Probably not. So what is the purpose of this bill? Same thing with driver's licenses for all, right? The purpose was to get driver's licenses for all undocumented community members. And we fought for a little bit in the bill to make sure that there was language access. But that didn't solve the issue of language access in New Jersey, so we had to fight for another bill, right? So just remember that your bill may not solve all the issues, but what is it that you do want to solve? Okay, now, so we went into, shouldn't have gone there.
Do you think that now is a good time for us to move into the workshop with the identifying the different, with who you contact, with the multiple choice one that I have?
Yeah, I think it's Haliema, if we go through this process, then it'll be easier for them to be like,
okay.
oh, I know who, yeah. So I'll make this really quick. So so once you have your bill, you have to find out who you want to champion your bill. So like, let's say it's a transportation bill. You want someone that is really vocal on transportation, that is really influential, really respected, really trustworthy. Like, they are going to champion your bill. Think of your prime sponsor as your champion, right? They are going to fight for your bill on the inside with all their legislators. You know, they're going to like make the moves on the inside. So while you're making the moves on the outside, they're making the moves on the inside. There's also step 4, which is when you start working with OLS. Be patient, right? So while you have drafted your bill, let's say you drafted your own bill, just be very patient because they have to review it and they will start crossing things out and be like, you can't do that. That doesn't, we don't have money for this. Oh no, the actual cost of this bill would be this. Just be patient. It takes a few weeks. I think it takes like 2 to 3 weeks for this to get back to you. But if you're working with them, they can draft your own bill, but it just might not be the bill that you wanted. It's the bill that, they thought through, because they are government workers. Okay. And that's a superhero. That's a champion. Now we're going to move on to when your bill gets introduced into the Assembly and the Senate. So once your bill gets introduced, it is really important to celebrate. It's really, really important to make it really big, right? So you've drafted your bill. You've got a prime sponsor who's like a really awesome champion who's going to fight for your bill and fight for your community, right? On the inside. And now your bill has gotten introduced into the legislature. They have introduced it into the Assembly and they have introduced it into the Senate. You have to make sure that your celebration is as big and bold as possible so that the press gets a hold of it. And they're like, wow, this thing is a really big issue. Look at the hundreds of people that showed up at the town hall when they announced this law. Look at the amount of students that showed up for XYZ. So just make sure that your celebration is big, bold, and powerful. Also remember your numbers. So any time that a bill gets introduced into the Senate and the Assembly, they have a number. So for example, I'm thinking of I don't know why this one is coming up to mind, but the anti-detention ban, closing down all detention centers, A5207 was the bill number in the Assembly. And then I think it was 2227 in the Senate. At 2227, right? So these are important to remember. Remember your numbers as much as possible. And then also build momentum, right? Do you just want to make sure that you're big, that you're, talking to the press about your bill, that you're a champion in the legislature talking about your bill? And then step 6 is committee referral. Once it gets introduced into the Assembly and the Senate, it has to get submitted. It has to get pushed to a committee. And we're going to talk about committees in a second, but do your research now as to what committee you think your bill is going to. If you have a transportation bill, you're probably going to be put in the transportation committee. So now we're going to talk about committees really quickly. The committee hearings. This is when these legislators who sign up for a committee, they represent that committee, so we'll keep with the transportation committee, right? There's specific legislators that really care about transportation or very have a lot of experience with transportation, so they're on this committee. If your bill is a transportation bill, you're going to go into that committee and you're going to advocate for your bill in that committee. They're going to they're going to ask a lot of questions about your bill. They're going to ask about the cost. This is where you're going to bring like community stories and X, Y, Z. So for committee hearings, just make sure to prep. So mark any upcoming committee hearings, even if your bill hasn't been assigned to that committee. Make sure that it's on your calendar because it literally might get posted to that committee the day before. Recruit as many community voices as possible, right? So if you have a transportation bill, make sure that you're getting, truck drivers, make sure that you're getting people that ride bikes, make sure that you're getting walkers, right? Like people who are going to be impacted by this bill and are in support of this bill, bring them along. Get them to write their testimony. And then also triple your efforts for legislative meetings. You should be going to your legislators, telling them, hey, like this bill is up for committee. This is all the things that you need to know. This is why it's really important. So make sure that you're also, in the time that you're preparing for your committees, you're also getting other legislators to sign on to your bill, getting them to support your bill. Also compare notes, draft your testimony, help community members out with drafting their own testimony. You only have 3 minutes to speak when you're in a committee, so you have to prepare a whole testimony about why this bill is important in 3 minutes. And then afterwards, before this, make sure that you have a press statement already prepared before you even go to the committee. You should have a press statement if it passes, and you should have a press statement if your bill doesn't pass committee, because you need to be on top of how you were writing the story, writing the narrative about what happened to your bill. So make sure that you have a press statement, make sure that you have member alerts, make sure that you have a call to action. Even if you don't have to use them, it's really important that you still do it. So the week of testimony comes in, you have to register in advance. Lynn is gonna show you how to register for public testimony later. So I won't go over this. And then just know that when a committee hearing happens, the legislators in that committee can change your bill, like right then and there. They can be like, I don't really like this, so we're gonna erase this. Or actually, that doesn't make sense, so we're gonna write this in. They can literally make amendments right then and there. So just be prepared for that. And if the Assembly Transportation Committee makes a change, the Senate Transportation Committee has to make a change too. So the committee has to vote on it. They have to have a majority. If the majority, of course, you have to get the majority votes for it to pass, and then for it to get referred out of committee or referred to another committee. So just understand why your bill might pass or not pass. Does it mean you need more votes? Does it mean this committee really sucks and you just shouldn't be in this committee? Maybe you need to be referred to another one. So just always make sure that you're getting the votes and that you're understanding why your bill is in that committee. We're gonna jump into assembly floor votes. This one's really fast. So floor votes, these are really fun, but really scary at the same time. Before you go into your floor vote, meaning that the bill is now being, your bill has now passed the first committee, or even second committee. It's now on the floor to get voted on. Just make sure that you're marking again every voting section that is up, You don't know if your bill is going to be put on there or not, so you should literally put these on your calendar. But also you should know if they're going to be put on there because your champion should be telling you, your legislative champion, your prime sponsor should be telling you. Make sure that when the floor vote happens, when they're finally voting on your bill, that you have a lot of people there. If you look at this, all the people appearing in the balcony were there for driver's licenses for all. So you should have a lot of people there. And you should spend your time thanking the legislators that really helped get the bill here. So you're thanking your prime sponsor, you're thanking all the co-sponsors, you're thanking all the people that wrote support letters or spoke on behalf of your bill. You're literally saying thank you, just to make sure that they're going to vote yes when the floor vote happens. So step one, they're going to read the vote. Step one, they're going to read the bill. So they're going to read the bill number. Let's do this. So 85207, they're going to read it. And they're going to be like, bans detention centers in the state of New Jersey. And then they're going to open it up for votes. And then it tells you, literally you're seeing all the numbers like on the screen, tell you like who voted yes, who voted no, who voted yes, who voted no, who didn't vote at all because they were absent. And then that's it. Like that's you determine then if your bill passed or not. If it doesn't have like a tiebreaker, it goes into a second reading where they read it again, right? They read the bill number and they read what it does, and they have to vote again, like vote on it again. If it doesn't have a tiebreaker that second time, you have to go to that bill reading again, and this is really rare. It doesn't usually go through a second or third reading. It usually only goes through one reading, but we have had bills like the Domestic Workers Bill of Rights that went through, I think, like 3 readings. So just make sure that you know just make sure that you know what's going to happen to your bill. It should never be a surprise to you when you're on the floor of the chamber what the votes are going to look like. Okay, so we went through the assembly vote. So floor votes are not linear.
Sorry.
And I mean this because
Really quick.
sorry?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, just really quick. I don't want to cut you off or anything. Just we have like a hard stop in about 2 minutes. If that's okay.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah. So for the floor vote, it has to pass the first chamber and the second chamber. So like if the assembly voted on it and they changed anything, the Senate has to also make those changes and vote on the same exact bill language. So they have to be the identical bill. And then once it has passed through the assembly and through the Senate, it goes to the governor's office. It goes to the governor's desk. The governor decides what happens to the bill, and there's 4 things that he can do or she can do. 1, they can sign the bill into law, making it a law. 2, they can conditionally veto it. It means that they will pass it only if something changes. So that they'll just say conditionally veto, you have to change this one thing, I won't sign it. If it doesn't get changed, send it back. The governor can also absolutely veto it and be like, I'm not signing this thing, like at all. And it just dies. And the last thing the governor can do is do nothing. And do nothing means that the governor has 45 days, I think it's 45 days. It's like an amount of days. The governor has 45 days, yes, to pass to sign a bill to law. If the governor doesn't sign it in those 45 days, it just dies. Nothing happens. The bill is dead. Nothing happened. Yeah. And then once you have your bill and the governor signs it, like now you're in implementation process, which is a whole other thing, but they implement the law. But out of that implementation process, sometimes we get other issues that we go back to drafting a new bill. We go back to finding a co-sponsor and go through this whole legislative process again. Like I mentioned before, right? We passed driver's licenses for all. We were in the implementation process. Community members are going to the MVC. But language access was terrible. So we thought of a language access bill and we passed it, right? We went through this whole process again. So that's it for how a bill becomes a law. And that's it. They're on Instagram, X, and I think also Blue Sky now. And then if you want to check out any of our campaigns or any of our programs, you can go to our website right there.
Thank you so much, Perry. That was a very in-depth overview, and you got through a lot in a short amount of time, so I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lima.
Thank you. Talk to you. Bye.
Bye, Barry. Thank you.
Okay, so now we're gonna get into a workshop. So this is the part where you guys kind of get to take what we just learned and put it into practice.